Christianity was never supposed to be a religion that existed. Why? Because in the Old Testament and the New Testament, to be called an Israelite was highly significant of being a child of the Most High. The law, statutes, and commandments was given to the Israelites. So even if you were a Gentile and you were grafted in, you were not called Christian. No, that didn't exist back then until the New Testament, when they were first called Christians in the Church of Antioch and all of that. So to be an Israelite is to be grafted into the household of the Father. And to be called Israel, you bear the name of the Father in the name of the promise that was given to Jacob by way of the Father. A prince who has power with God, that is what it means to be an Israelite. So Christianity was never supposed to exist. Not only that, but to be called a Christian was a derogatory term that was used and given to those who opposed the king back in Christ's time. The disciples not only were preaching the gospel that sets you free from sin, but they were preaching a gospel that was setting the captives free, not only mentally, but physically. There was people that were under the rulership of kings that were doing them wrong, and they came preaching a gospel that gave them life, gave them a new understanding what it means to be free. Believe it or not, the gospel that was preached back in the biblical times actually went against the rulership of the governments, went against the rulership of kings and powers that be that wasn't in the bed with the church. So that being said, to be called a Christian is a badge of honor for the kingdom, not because we were supposed to be called that, but it showed ourselves approved that we were following Christ, that we were setting people free from the mindset and the rulership of the Greeks and the Gentiles. Let's just include all nations, the Gentiles. We were being set free from that way of thinking and being grafted into the way of the Father, the way of the Israelites. Even Paul said, count it to yourself glory that you are being persecuted for our Father's name's sake. So it wasn't that the name of the Father was Christian. It was that these people represented the Father and were pushing the gospel, rebelling against the kingship of the Gentiles, and they were being called Christians and being persecuted heavily. So what is the Christian religion really? Nowadays, we see that the church is in the bed with the government and they work hand in hand. You don't see the church speaking out against the governments and they might say principalities. We speak out against the enemy, the principalities. The church doesn't realize that there's a physical enemy, and that's the church of today. There's a physical enemy that is keeping our people captive, not just mentally, but physically. We're celebrating Christmas and Easter and Thanksgiving and birthdays and all of this stuff that is against the Father. Now, if you are to be a Christian, which is a person, not named a person by the Father, but named Christian by people, to be a Christian means that you are rebellious and set apart from the way of the world. But more so than being called a Christian, I would rather you be called an Israelite, because within the family of the Israelites, you have the law, statutes, and commandments that is not done away with. Yes, Christ came and fulfilled it, but he said, if you love me, you will keep my law, statutes, and commandments. So in the Israelite family, you are commanded to keep the law, statutes, and commandments. However, in Christianity, you are not commanded to keep the law, statutes, and commandments. And I would even go as far as to say that 9 times out of 10, you will hear more Christians say that the laws are done away with and they don't have to subscribe to the law of Moses, what they call the law of Moses, but it's actually the law of the Father, and the spirit of the Father is in his law. I hope this message lifts your spirit and does not turn you away. I know that there's going to be a lot of people who do not receive this message, and I understand. I know that's going to come. I know a lot of y'all probably already swiped away now, but for those of you who stayed, like, comment, subscribe. Let's discuss. Let's talk about this. Let's push this message forward, because our children need this. We no longer need to raise children up in the darkness. Our family needs this. Even if they don't want to hear it, let's spread this good news and keep it moving. If they don't receive it, keep it moving. Shake the dust off your feet and go on to the next people. God is sending us people daily. Let's push this word, keep the faith, keep the law, statutes, and commandments, and hey, you got it, man. It's simple as that. But I love you guys. Like I said, if y'all like these videos, like, comment, and subscribe, and we'll talk more about this in the future. Let's go.